Welcome to Happily Ever Aftermath, the podcast that explores the movies that influenced how we view love and romantic relationships. Yes, there will be spoilers. I'm your host, Diana Rojek Skonnord. I want a woman that's going to arouse my intellect as well as my loins. We're talking about Coming to America from 1998, and here to discuss this movie, hop on one leg and bark like a dog, is Ryan. Hi.
Good morning, my queen.
Oh, that's really nice. Thank you. Make a noise like an orang. Never mind. Okay.
Ooh.
I like this movie so much. And this was my pick. I will point out very specifically that I watched this movie a lot when I was younger, and when the sequel was announced, / when the sequel came out, I kept dancing back and forth between I can't watch the sequel until I do this movie on the podcast, but I can't do this movie because I want to watch the sequel. So I sat on it for a really long time in the hopes of trying to lure a different, very special guest. I'm sorry you're not that special guest, but thank you for discussing this with me anyways.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad to be here. And yes, it's true. She was very anxious about the prospect of watching the sequel. She was literally hopping on one foot and making noises like an orangutan. But in an anxious way.
Yes, I did not bow to you as I hopped out of the room.
No, it was for her own benefit.
Yeah, more than anything else. But no, this is a movie we reference back to a lot in my family. There have been many stomping of foot, screaming sexual chocolate during family dinners. It's just, I mean, I'll also admit that I have posted the scene with the barbers talking about Martin Luther King for Martin Luther King Day on my Facebook page years ago.
One of my favorite gags in the movie, hands down.
And so this movie is very much like a part of me that I don't realize it, and I have a couple notes for it. But can you tell the listeners, as if I don't know this story beat for beat, your experience with Coming to America?
Sure. So I didn't see this movie when I was younger. I kind of became aware of it during that booming era of IMDb in the early aughts, which was also when I was dating Diana and getting exposed to a lot of movies that I wasn't familiar with before. And I guess my memories of Coming to America come up mostly in the context of reading about other John Landis movies. It's
Sure.
in the trivia for Trading Places, because
Absolutely.
there's a cameo by two characters from that. And Trading Places I had seen when I was younger, and I was a fan of that movie. So of course, as I'm browsing IMDb, I land on that. It's like, oh, this Coming to America movie. I'm dimly aware that it exists. But yeah, I had read the synopsis. I kind of knew the broad strokes and some of the most famous jokes from it. Definitely heard a few quoted from Diana, a few YouTube clips later on. And I think I actually first saw it, I don't know, maybe more in the late aughts,
So have you seen this movie without me?
No, I haven't
Okay.
seen it without you.
Oh, so no, this was...
Do you remember when we watched it together for the first time?
Yes, we were living in where we are now, so...
Oh, that was much later than the late
Yes.
aughts.
Yes, I was
I
about to say.
fabricated that memory. Okay, so that would have been 2015-ish at the earliest.
At the earliest, yes. So...
That's right. Yeah, okay. It's
I was
coming
about
back
to say,
me.
we sat in that living room over there and watched it.
You're right.
yes.
What movie was I thinking of?
I don't know.
Probably a Trading Places rewatch is what I was envisioning.
Always possible, but very specifically, please explain to everyone why we watched Coming to America.
For the first time?
Yes. Why did I have you watch Coming to America?
So I'd know all the inside jokes, I think.
No. Oh my God, I do have to tell the story.
All right,
about-
please tell the story. I
So-
remember needing to know about sexual chocolate and Soul Glow and McDowell's and why these things were so amusing to you.
All of this is accurate, but the actual reason, the catalyst for it was because it was New Year's and I wanted to watch Trading Places. It was not available, so we watched this.
Yeah.
It was Trading Places wasn't available on streaming, so instead we watched Coming to America, because of course when you put something in there, they're just like, how about this movie that's tangentially related? I'm like, pretty close.
And you
I
wanted to show it to me for a long time, and I remember you getting really excited. Yeah,
I got really excited, and I'm just like, do you mind taking a detour instead and watching this instead? And okay, I should have told the story. It was pretty exciting, and I just remember being really nervous the first time because I'm just like, oh no, what if you don't think this is as funny as I am? And I've just been obnoxious for all these years. Yes, I was being obnoxious, but the original references were not as funny as I made them out to be in my head.
I mean, if you quoting movies that I have no idea of the context of was going to drive me away, it would have done it many years before that. So.
I mean, true, but at the same time, it's not like when you and I talk about plastic bins, and it's see, exactly, that's funny to us. But if we were to,
I don't think I could explain why that's funny to even to people who like know what it came from. But yeah, it's just sorry. It's sorry, audience. No explanation is forthcoming for plastic bins. It's just inside marriage jokes,
right? And exactly, but it's also one of those things where it morphs and it becomes more and more hilarious than it should be. So. All right, I'm sorry. I told your story, and
now I have to tell yours.
You
saw this movie as a child, as I don't know exactly what age, and so did the rest of your family. And there was much quoting, and
I mean, accurate. Additionally, I would say I was probably a teenager when I was actually really looking forward to being very impressed by you making a generic statement about how I recorded this off of television and I watched it a whole bunch of times.
I could have made an educated guess.
Yes, and yes, it was recorded off of either Comedy Central or USA. So
of course, so you didn't know about the R-rated parts, and
did.
And it so takes you off guard because this was from like a less cynical time of movie making. I think I talked about this when we reviewed Back to School, that like, they would just like throw in some like really raunchy stuff or like a very brief nude scene, and there was no calculus of like, this movie would make a lot more money if it were PG-13, and like this is not like an R-rated comedy as you would think of it today. This is not a movie that needs to be R-rated to work. And yeah, if it had come from a later decade, they definitely would have gone for a PG-13 rating.
And now I'm concerned because I don't know what the rating is for Coming to America, and it may be PG-13, and then that will take the bite out of it. You know what? I'm not going to be concerned just yet. We will talk about that in the other segments. Mm-hmm. But no, please continue.
Oh, I mean that was about it. But yeah, like I said, the bite to it. I think I must think about this a lot because I said something similar when we were talking about the Hating Game. Just the fact that it's like kind of refreshing that these people,
actually curse,
like not excessively, but just like in a manner, commensurate with a real world adult. So
Well, there is that, but various lines that I did not know. Younger version of me did not know. The royal penis is clean, Your Highness. Did not make it into the cut that I saw. Mm-hmm. The naked women.
Right. That's the same scene, I think.
Various other, yes, that is the case.
And that did set up the joke about the other men in the royal family and entourage, like being way too happy about quote unquote bathing and.
There is that, but of course there's another part of that where his father. Okay, so Akeem wants.
I thought you had sex with your bathers.
Yeah, I know, and that
did that make you uncomfortable?
That just okay. So it's been a while since I've watched this movie, and of course the stuff that takes you off guard. This movie is no Revenge of the Nerds level of oh my god.
Yeah.
The things, well, and not just the things where like you don't remember it, because I do remember it, but I just don't remember feeling that way about it until I'm just like, whoa. It's no 16 Candles in that thing. But there are the little things in there where it's just like, I mean, and the stuff that's less egregious, i.e. when Akeem is being introduced to his future bride, and this very loud woman is working her way through there, and she's a larger woman, and she's like, oh my god, that look on, or not that look on his
sort of like comically unattractive, and he's like recoiling in horror because like, oh, is that the bride? And
she's not exactly like unattractive per se.
Yeah, I know, not like by real world standards, but like in the comedy context, just like it's a middle-aged heavy-set woman. Oh my god,
Yeah, right. So. And of course that's not who that is, and all this other stuff. And there's also the comments of, well, not the comments, but just like, this is Africa and Zamunda is the country, but at the same time when he goes to America, everyone just says Africa, and
right,
not really like kind of giving any type of acknowledgement. There's this stuff in the context of the movie, which is just like sometimes people are just ignorant that way, and it's being portrayed accurately. / there's also the people who made it behind the scenes, and they kind of made some maybe potentially like
you're talking about like the kind of overgeneralizing of like, oh,
Of
Africa is
Africa.
just one place. Yeah, there were some lines that are odd. It's like, oh, does everyone in Africa talk like you? It's like, well, clearly not. I mean, but also, I mean, what I kind of noticed is just, I think that like the fact that
sorry, just for me though, it's so funny because when you say that, it just sounds so blatantly ignorant. But he's
Right.
actually referring to a very educated man who's like,
oh, that's true. Yes,
Yeah.
it's like, is everyone? Yeah, that bears mentioning. Yes,
yeah, I was
everyone.
about to say, wait a minute, I don't remember that line. No, she's actually referring to how like, well, then
Right.
again, that's yeah.
I mean, my takeaway from that is probably just that like saying the name Zamunda is just a bit awkward because like it's not a real country, and just reminding the audience that there's this like fictitious country might like kind of take them out of the moment, and you don't want to lean too much on the world building as you referred to it earlier.
Well, I mentioned that
Earlier
before.
off air, I mean.
I was about to say,
Sorry.
we mentioned that earlier before we got started because I made a note that we had hit pause somewhere about 40 minutes in, and Lisa's character hadn't even been introduced yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, wow, they did a really good job world building. And I don't mean world building in the way we know it, like an entire cinematic universe, but just really
just the
setting
background.
up who these people are.
The pacing of this movie is interesting. It really takes its time
Yes.
in the scenes in Zamunda, like the first maybe 30 minutes or so in the movie
Yeah.
before Eddie Murphy's character actually does go to America. And it's pretty lavish in terms of just establishing that like not only is his character a prince from the lap of luxury, but this like really kind of almost like hyperactive, surrounded by servants at all times. There's like this whole gang of people who get up and rush around to make sure he doesn't have to cross a room without walking on rose petals. It's like it's really over the top, but in a good way.
Yeah, the first gag is, this is my 21st birthday. Can I please go to the bathroom by myself?
Right.
That's very funny, Your Highness. Wipers!
Exactly. Yeah, and they take their time with that, and also just like really I was looking at the set design and these armies of extras all in these elaborate costumes. It's like, wow, this must have eaten up just like half the movie's budget right here. They're really
Interestingly, like it said, according to Wikipedia, $36 million budget.
uh-huh.
In 1988, sure, but at the same time, really?
Yeah.
Amazing.
At least $10 million worth of extras.
And
From my estimate.
well, to an extent. Oh, really prominent extras too. Academy Award winning in the future extras.
Oh yes. Go ahead and you probably better go ahead and explain that.
Well, no, it's very cool because in one of the scenes when they're in the barber shop, you see a young Cuba Gooding Jr. getting his hair cut.
Right.
And I wonder, I'm very curious because I read in trivia that he had a bigger scene.
Yeah.
And it got cut. And I had mentioned to you, okay, first of all,
I don't recall whether he had a line in the final cut.
he didn't.
No, he didn't.
No.
Okay.
The funny thing is, though, is that like in the first scene when Akeem is having breakfast with his parents, they're in a polo outfit, and then the
Right.
next scene is that they're doing just like some martial arts
so
training.
They picked him up for his morning exercise, but he had already gotten dressed in a polo uniform.
Yes.
Semi shows up also in a polo uniform, says he's off to, and then they like change into their martial arts outfits. It's
Right.
like, why were they?
Well, no, I'm willing to.
Does he just wear a polo uniform to breakfast?
No,
Probably not.
this
but-
is why I'm curious. How
ahead.
many deleted scenes were there? I'm sure there
Probably
was a
a-
polo scene.
Yeah.
Not to mention
Horse
there was.
wrangling just went over budget.
I don't know, but okay. One of the early things I said was just like, that's some good matte painting work for supposed to be the palace.
Yeah.
And they're having all these people going in there, and I'm like really paying attention to it. And,
People and elephants.
people and elephants, yes.
Mm-hmm.
It just I'm in watching this critically for the first time in a long time, not panically because you're watching it and I want you to enjoy it, but just like there's just so much like care that went into this movie, and it just makes it even better. In addition to the fact that it's freaking hilarious, so honkin' funny. I love this movie, even though approximately like maybe 1/4 of it was cut out in syndication for me. But it's the little things like less cursing and what's a dumb fuck? Oh, another thing, by the way. And honestly, this stems to why I also really, really like this movie, is that I really, really like Akeem's character.
Yeah.
He is so idealistic, but also like it's just the
Like
smile.
very extrovertedly wholesome.
Wholesome.
Yeah.
That is a part of it. Yeah. I mean, he's not 100% wholesome
Oh, sure.
as but at the same time, he's just attentive and nice and just
And yeah, and just like in his establishing scenes, he's got these like very progressive ideas about women that are clashing with his, conservative father who just wants him to marry
arranged
some
marriage.
Mm-hmm.
his arranged fiance.
Oh, as was noted in the song as his future wife is to be introduced.
Oh, jeez.
Just again, one of those things. And another thing that I love about this movie so much is just the tiny little quips here and there that are just put in there just beautifully. And yes, they're jokes that were written, but at the same time, I had mentioned when Randy Watson is singing and he's just like, I believe the children are our future. Thank you. And because somebody's just clapping in the background, and just immediately, thank you. And
a lot of comedic talent, injecting a lot of nuance into what makes these things funny.
Right. And just, I didn't even start with the cast, which is incredible casting. I mean, come on. I believe, according to trivia, it's the first time Eddie Murphy started his Eddie Murphy playing multiple characters thing, which is just so great. So Eddie Murphy plays Prince Akeem, and you got Arsenio Hall as his. We were talking about this. Is it his friend? Is it his servant?
His friend and valet. I would probably guess. Yeah.
It's hard to tell, really, but James Earl Jones as his father, Madge Sinclair as his mother, the Queen, and then Shari Headley is his love interest, Lisa, and then John Amos plays her father, but who is also Akeem's boss as he comes to America when he's working at McDowell's, which is its own fantastic gag.
They're having a little trademark dispute with McDonald's. And if you haven't seen it, it's funny because it's like it's set up as like, this universe's version of McDonald's, where it's like, there's this fictional country called Zamunda, and there's this fictional fast food restaurant called McDowell's, and then it's just no, McDonald's exists, and they're trying to sue him, and
No, it's totally different. So they got the Big Mac, I got the Big Mick. My buns don't have any seeds.
And I liked how you pointed out how their uniforms and stuff really plays up the Scottish angle. They're in like these like Highlands tartans and the little hats.
Oh, it's so good. And then again, you can't necessarily appreciate it growing up, but from here I am 30 plus years later, hello, Samuel L. Jackson.
That's
hello.
Before he was that famous and just like pops up in a one scene role.
Right. And then, hello, Cuba Gooding Jr. who's in this, and then it's kind of an Eriq La Salle who, let's be perfectly honest, plays the villain of this movie in the true evil sense because he's supposed to be the shit boyfriend.
Yeah.
Whereas, tradition / James Earl Jones is a villain of the movie, but not entirely, because of course he has the power to, change things, once he's reminded by his very, very smart wife.
Yes. Do I know that actor from somewhere else, by the way? Not James Earl Jones. Eriq La Salle.
Eriq La Salle. I mean, if I had to take a guess, do you remember him from Logan?
I'm not sure that I do, but I think he's got one of those faces. He just looks very familiar.
Most familiar from being a longtime character on ER, which I don't think you watched.
Oh, I didn't. Okay,
Yep.
Yeah, I'll have to troll IMDb later. It's like, he was a supporting character in that one movie that most people haven't seen. But
that's how we know these. That's why I said, like, do you remember him from Logan? He was the owner of the place that Wolverine and Charles had. When they were escaping, they stayed with somebody. It was his house.
Okay.
But that still doesn't help.
Not really, no.
Okay. So do you remember that commercial back from 1997?
I do.
Okay. I will finish the rest of that offline.
Sure.
But, no, he's from Coming to America.
Oh, okay. That explains it.
I have to point out the ways that, as an adult, like you said, Akeem, he's very attentive. He's very tied to that. He knows he has a responsibility to his parents and to his, nation. But sorry, go ahead.
He's very outspoken about not wanting to go along with what his parents want, but not to the point of defying them. He's like trying to, persuade his father to let him out of these arrangements, but he's,
Well, he also takes advantage of the fact that his father is just like, oh, you want to go sow your wild oats? Okay.
Yeah.
40 days. And he's just like, it's done. Oh, you don't want rose berries anymore? Fine. Anyone who throws roses at my son will have to answer to me.
Yeah. It's interesting that like the most rebellious thing Akeem is doing is like, misleading his father about his motives to go to New York, and he's secretly planning to come back with a fiance. And
yeah, and not even and for all we know, he probably would have not just married her. He would have like, brought her back, tried to speak to reason, or for all I know, this is like definitely addressed in the sequel, and God even knows. But the whole thing about Akeem as, the protagonist, the one I'm rooting for in my younger years. I mean, one of the things that I think was really funny is the advice that he got from the barbershop, I assume owner, was, you have to get in good with her daddy.
Right.
And I definitely started taking notes on that because, I don't know how much of this movie had an influence with me, but it definitely worked in the opposite direction because I found myself very much attached to these, we'll call them gentlemen, but in my age bracket, so it's not creepy. Growing up, like in my younger years and my teenage years, I remember somebody very specifically just having so much easy conversation and respect for my father when we were at events. And I think that really had an impact on how much I really wanted to date him. And that's not good.
It's not bad. I mean,
that's not great though. But at the same time, it does make sense though. I mean, I am a person where if I have a good relationship with my father, I want whomever is important to me to also have a good relationship with my father.
Yeah. When we were first dating, you were not in a rush to have me meet your parents, but when we did, you were pretty invested in it. So
well, yeah. I also didn't want to like shove you into that too early.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Well, small side story. I remember not telling my parents about you, and then it became really uncomfortable when you went to go pick me up when I'm like, I'm gonna go hang out at Alexis's, and then just guy picked me up and then I left. Uncomfortable.
You were 18 at that point?
Shut up. Shut up. Almost 19. I didn't have a lot of practice, but so that's like the younger version of me. The later version of me watching this again is just like, there's a scene where Lisa is pissed off because Daryl had just announced their engagement that he did not manage to let her in on.
Right.
And Akeem sees her outside, offers her champagne, is very pleased when she says, I don't have anything to celebrate.
Yeah.
A very quick, like, little quirk of his face. And then she's like, okay. And then he leaves her. And then she's like, wait. That doesn't mean I don't want your company. And I'm like, oh my God, he's so fucking respectful. He never he tries to talk to her and nothing was ever there, and he removes himself and he comes back and he's there for her, but he's never like forcing anything on her.
Yeah.
Not even one of those shitty, like, just be the friend until you get to be the boyfriend stuff.
Yeah. And I'm mildly embarrassed to admit this didn't really register when I was watching the movie, but now that we're sitting here talking about it, it's like painfully obvious that they were both the subject of an engagement on which they did not have any input.
Oh my God. I've been watching this movie for decades and I didn't realize that until now.
No, that's like, yeah. So like, yeah.
And he even says that too, like, in my family.
Anyone in the world could sympathize with what she just went through. It's him,
And the parents are very invested in this.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What's weird is that growing up the whole time, it's like, again, I don't consider her father to be a villain per se, but at the same time, stop it.
Yeah. He means well, but he's an obstacle. That's
right. Of course. And just like, I don't want you to have to struggle the way your mom and I did. And this was my observation. How would she be struggling? She if she needed it, she has you.
Yeah. And that feeling probably doubles down him being a widowed father and,
Oh, that's a good point.
Like an extra sense of responsibility for her well-being.
Sure. But just, I mean, like I said, It seems like that weird thing of like so I asked you from the beginning, like, do you consider this a romantic comedy? Like from the definition of romantic comedy, rom-com, what have you?
I'd say absolutely I do. I mean, it's romantic. It's a comedy. There's a misunderstanding in the final act. What more do you need?
I laugh about that too, but for me, what I think is great is that him literally finding love is the driving force of this movie.
Oh yeah, of course.
So I think that's fantastic. As opposed to, what are you talking about? It has romance, it has comedy. It's totally a rom-com. Go fuck yourself.
And a third act misunderstanding. Try to keep up, Diana.
You've seen Coming to America twice now.
Twice,
yes. Any big thoughts about the movie? I mean, I've gushed over it, so I just want to make sure you get any of your opinions in.
Yeah, I think we've hit on most of my major reaction points. It's it has the benefit of a very charming lead character who's written in almost like like the movie doesn't work if he's not just like this perfect, that he, is looking for a woman he can respect and is being very respectful about it. And he's like got these very enlightened viewpoints despite growing up in this maybe repressive culture that's like repressive to him personally too. And yeah, I mean, if this were a deeper movie, it would be like, oh, you just write this like super sympathetic main character with no real flaws to speak of. But it works. And it I mean, not only does it work adequately, but yeah, I would agree with you that it does uplift the movie. It just kind of, gets the audience feeling good early on, because there is a lot for Akeem to contrast to as he does meet this movie's very large cast of characters, which gets interestingly slow rolled. Yeah, we were talking about the runtime. It's surprising that this movie is almost 2 hours long, and once you get into it, it's like, oh yeah, there's a lot, a lot of little set pieces and and quirky supporting character, like whole groups of quirky supporting characters, like the guys in the barbershop, and then the guys at the presentation. There's the eccentric singer, the eccentric preacher guy.
Don't forget the time that they spent at a bar.
Right. Oh, yeah. The eccentric lineup of women that Akeem doesn't want to date.
Right. Well, no. I mean, he's interested in all, and that's the other thing that makes him very, very open to this, is that he's talking to all of them,
and he discovers all of their off-putting personal qualities before he respectfully moves on.
Sure. Well, something you had mentioned about the whole rom-com thing and or potentially a rival thing. Akeem is not perfect, of course, but the thing that's holding him back is the secret.
Well, yeah. Well, what's the thing that makes him not perfect in your mind? Just the deception, or?
Well, on a technicality, yes. I mean, young me would think like, no, he is perfect because he wants to find his true love. He doesn't want to just marry out of obligation. Yeah,
and even I couldn't turn off the kind of calculating part of my brain that's like, okay, like here is the right place to come clean. In fact, maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit because I can see this folding into the when they fall in love conversation. But like, when is the moment when? Okay, well, yeah, like my major line in the sand that I wanted to draw on the plot of this movie is like, where's the point where Akeem should have totally said the truth? That like he kept the facade going on longer than he strictly needed to, and
I really, really, really want to make sure she likes me before she finds out I'm a prince.
Yeah, and he's just hyper paranoid that once she finds out that he comes not only from wealth but from royalty, that it's going to change their whole dynamic. And he's had this whole life of people not respecting him for his essential personal qualities, so he's maybe like overcorrecting for that.
To be fair though, that time frame of them together was less than 40 days. Because 40 days was the period of time that he was given to travel. Yeah. So he meets her not right away. And so they're dating. He was employee of the month.
Right.
And so I'm just wondering, I wonder if they gave him employee of the month because he got that burglar.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
The robber. It's just like, okay, you've been here for 4 days, but you're employee of the month now for that.
Yeah. And I mean that, so anyway, the line in the sand that I draw is where they're having dinner and then they go to dance. It's the same dinner where he tells her that he came from a family of goat herders, which I think is the first time he really lied. Other than saying being a student from the University of the United States, which is maybe more of a white lie. That's just a cover, but For
the most part, he does not lie, because when they're at the basketball game,
right,
and there is somebody who was from Zamunda is just like, oh my god, and they're just like, who was he? He's the man I met in the bathroom.
Well, yeah, which
not
is
a lie.
Absolutely. And even in that conversation when he says, "Oh, I worked in the family business," which is still not a lie. And yeah, I mean, I
bet you he was a goat herder. I wouldn't have. I didn't see any goats, but I wouldn't be surprised if he had done goat herding.
I mean, he definitely learned how to do difficult things in his life, all that like martial arts and acrobatics and presumably horseback riding, and it's like they could have done something with goats at some point too, as part of his education. It's not like he never had hardship, just like hardship in the context of being trained how to do royal things. But
he doesn't brush his own teeth.
He doesn't. Brushing his own teeth is not qualify as something that you would in his liberal education, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the analytic part of my brain, which would probably be better turned off for this kind of movie, but it was on, and I was just thinking like, well, okay, so like she's asking about your background, and if you lie about your background, that is kind of, lying about yourself. That is a direct obstacle to this whole you want to get her to know you thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, that could even be a time for like a half truth to say like, okay, the truth is I actually do come from a wealthy family, but I'm out here specifically because I want to get away from that. I, made a deliberate choice to, live in a small apartment and work in a fast food restaurant because I thought it would,
does he need to say,
enrich me.
Does he even need to say I come from a wealthy family? Well, I guess that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Like, what is the right time to tell her that? Because
yeah, and if it really is about getting to know each other, this is relevant stuff. I mean, the fact that he made those choices to, try to learn what it is to live humbly tells her something about him. And B, the fact that she also comes from a wealthy background and also is, choosing to work when maybe she doesn't need to because she apparently finds it fulfilling. This is like relevant stuff.
I mean, to an extent, maybe, because let's really think about this. This is Akeem's 21st birthday at the beginning of the movie. Mm-hmm. I was actually trying to do the math in my head of how old is Lisa.
Oh, interesting.
Because she was working, and in my head, like, I mean, Cleo McDowell was talking about how he worked their way up, and unfortunately, the wife didn't get to see it, see the success that he had.
Yeah.
So my question is like, how old were the girls when the mom died? Were the girls also struggling growing up too? And maybe that's why they want to hang out and keep doing it, because they want to keep partaking in their father's success. So,
or at least Lisa does. Maybe not Patrice.
I don't think Patrice does.
Yeah.
So again, it also could be like an age difference thing though as well, because the younger kid is just like, well, we've been like this for longer than Lisa remembers, and Lisa remembers, maybe growing up at a smaller home. So okay. And by the way, in my head, I worked it out to where if Akeem's 21, in my head, Lisa is like 24, because she's done a lot of like pretty impressive community stuff. And she's also like working with the, in the back office doing a bunch of operations type stuff. And I think Daryl is, for some reason, he feels 28 to me.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page with you about, Lisa being about 24 and Daryl maybe, I would have said maybe 27,
Right, because she's not a student.
Right.
And I can see, actually, you know what? No, I take that back, because I could see her dad like making her go to college because, of course, my daughter is going to go to college. But he's just like, no, you need to marry Daryl.
Right.
So maybe not.
Or maybe that's just his idea of, rich husband is better than her having a college degree, because that's just his outlook, maybe the way he was raised,
And it's also very possible he managed to get success without, so might as well go for somebody who already has the success rather than him still building it.
Yeah, like we said, Cleo, he's not a bad guy. He means well, but he just has some ideas that are not, the best for his daughter. So
bit antiquated.
Yeah, a little antiquated.
Sure.
But yeah, like I was saying, that there was a part of me that was like, that Akeem really, should be, catching on that this is the time to maybe, pull back some of the curtain. But,
right.
but of course, the real answer is that, if he did that, there wouldn't be a conflict and there wouldn't be a movie. It's the classic, why doesn't Gilligan just build a boat?
I don't want to be a full... Very nice, by the way. Very nice callback.
I know you want to quote that.
I shan't. I just
See, I don't think people who haven't seen the movie, I'm not sure they even understand why Diana's laughing at that.
But I will leave it as it is.
Okay.
And as I was saying, I don't want to be like an Akeem apologist the whole way through.
Oh sure, yeah, no, he's
well, and also when he and Lisa are going to go back to his place to have sex, he sees all the rose petals down, and all of a sudden it becomes a whole like, oh God, she can't know the truth now. At the very least, he says to her before he leaves her, I don't remember when it was, but before he leaves her, he says, I promise I will tell you at the right time.
Right.
So at the very least, he's not dancing around. It's like he's recognizing that all of this is very odd, and he's saying that, but it would,
in his mind, it's still strictly a matter of necessity.
Right. And the thing is that as he says that, I'm just like, well, he is still trying to like push her and try to like dance around this whole thing, and he's doing that. But at the very least, he's also not like, this is going to sound funny, he's also not like trying to pretend that nothing is wrong either.
True.
She's not an idiot. She sees that something is wrong, and he's telling her, and he's like, I understand that I'm being this way, but if he had said, I promise that I will tell you, and basically saying it's not the right time for me, basically like, at the right time. Because for her, the right time is just like, fucking tell me the truth.
Yeah.
But, it's an interesting middle.
Mhm.
And it felt just a little bit off to me. But at the same time, no, he's still doing it. He's still recognizing. Because he wants an equal.
Yeah. And he is ultimately a young person who's going to make mistakes.
Right.
So, in his first real relationship.
Oh, God, the mistakes I made when I was 21.
I know. Like, we were just talking about that. Like,
oh, my God, the mistakes I would have made if I was 21 and I had access to that kind of wealth. Oh, jeez. Okay, so we're kind of in mid-discussion about it, but, you were saying, the truth and when he should have told her and how the whole being in love thing. Let's back that up. When did they fall in love?
Well, when I answer these questions, I tend to get a little bit cynical and split hairs about like, oh, well, it's like attraction, but it wasn't real love. But I think this movie is like sending some pretty strong signals in the language of film, as it were, that like for Hakeem, it's literally a matter of love at first sight. And, this movie kind of has a lot to say about like, what does it take to get to know a person, and what does it take to like get to know the real person when there's like, the trappings of wealth in the way. And I think when Hakeem is, literally the first time he sees Lisa when she's on stage presenting at the was it the
Black Awareness
Week? Yeah. He's, enchanted with her intelligence and substance and
a little bit of a poison presence too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Also, if I may throw in a little extra there, she had just come on after Randy Watson. Ridiculousness completely on the stage, and she still managed to go like, and people do express themselves,
right?
But his message is still on point. The children are our future, and I'm just like, oh my God, was he captivated by that too? Recognizing how dumb it is, but still smiling and nodding to not hurt a person's feelings?
The fact that she had a sense of kindness where like, the audience was not really
not kind.
into that, and she was being
Mr. Randy Watson.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, that was so funny, the scattered applause, yeah. Yeah, and actually, one thing I was pondering during that is like, if we backtrack a little bit to like all of the qualities that's been promised for Hakeem's fiance back home, besides the submissiveness and the regality and the knowing all the formal aspects of being a queen, they also emphasize physical beauty and so on. And it's interesting that Hakeem never says that he's not interested in a woman's looks. He's never like dismissive of the whole like finding a partner to whom he's attracted. It's just he wants just that's not enough. And the fact that he's seems to be as much enchanted with Lisa's beauty as her more virtuous qualities, or being very like smart and community oriented and kind to Randy Watson. And yeah, actually I'm glad you pointed that out, the poise and eloquence. And it is interesting that maybe in the back of his head he is still looking for a queen, someone who's like not just a good partner for him, but who can also
captivate an audience,
inspire through leadership. And it's actually kind of remarkable that the movie manages to cram all that into a single scene, and honestly, you do kind of buy it that Hakeem is just like instantly just instantly wants her. And it's also very it's also comedically well executed, as he's like very absentmindedly emptying his entire money clip into the donation bowl, which, knowing him, is like probably thousands of dollars, if not more. So.
And even so, beforehand there were pageant contestants up there,
right? And
Simi's response is just like, okay, these are clearly the best women available to us, pick one and let's go.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, it's okay. So man, so
what a weird context to have a bunch of women in bikinis on the stage too, for like
there's different ways and different pursuits in the music.
No, I'm sure. No, I mean, I'm not even saying like having beauty pageant contestants, but like they weren't having an entire pageant. It's not like they couldn't be wearing like their dresses or the ball gowns or.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Ask the writers.
I mean, at least they weren't bathers, I guess.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that. I'm like, so we need some naked women in this country, and they weren't fully naked. So
yeah.
So you thought he fell in love at first sight?
Pretty much.
What about Lisa?
Yeah, I'm gonna bring that back to the same scene where, and I think this is part of the reason when I was saying like I was, if this weren't a romantic comedy, but if it were just real life, when I really would have wanted Akeem to tell the truth, is that dinner where they danced to what was the title of the song?
To Be Loved.
To Be Loved. Yeah. Yeah, seems like a bit of a gimme answer because it's the movie's not being especially coy about their feelings, but yeah, that was but that also as I was saying earlier, that kind of seemed to be the big payoff to all of Akeem's buildup about like, I want to really get to know my bride as a person. It's like he's looking for some kind of like deeper substance, and that's kind of like the first real conversation where they're talking about things that feel a bit more substantial. And yeah, it's just you can kind of see it in Lisa's eyes that like, oh, this is someone I can really respect and someone I feel really attracted to. So
right, and I will say that I don't want to just blanketly agree with you that it was a love at first sight thing, even though there's so much that can really point to that with what you just described for Akeem. But at the same time, though, it's kind of difficult to argue with it. So I know that there was like a period of time where they were hanging out that we didn't get to see. And so, yeah, he's captivated from her from the beginning. I think everything just keeps growing from there. So I will, for the sake of the podcast, say yes, love at first sight for him. For Lisa, it's a little bit... I do really enjoy that scene with them dancing because there is a moment of comedy because she actually thinks that he may be interested in her sister because there was a double date situation.
Right. And her sister was definitely interested in him.
Yes, absolutely. And so, what about Patrice? Oh, I'm not interested in, Patrice. Well, what about Daryl? I'm not interested in Daryl either. And she doesn't even blink or anything. And it's just it's so...
That was a little bit intense.
I know, it really was. And so, yeah, I'm gonna work with that too. I mean, she kisses him. I don't know if they kiss each other or if she kisses him, but it's just, it's there. And that's when I think it is because they go from very, very, friendly conversation to just very, very quickly. What about you? What about this? And, and then it's just boom right there. So yeah, I think I'll run with it on that, even though it just feels like Ryan, what did you say? That sounds great. But again, the movie, even though it's long, it still only gives you so much.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a movie that's like trying to be especially complicated on the emotional side, which is fine. That's perfect. That's what it's for.
One of the things that's great about it.
Oh, totally, yeah.
Now for what happens next.
And this is outside of the sequel, or
so here's the thing: is that I haven't looked at any of the rules, but I will say that even though
the rules for your podcast,
the rules for my podcast, the rules that were established by my podcast,
consult our charter document.
Like the Born Identity / the Cutting Edge / Before Sunrise.
Oh yeah, you do have rules. Yeah,
I do have rules. I have rules that I tried to ask Polina about, and she's like, "Oh yeah."
So if does it have to be the same director and the same screenwriter?
Same screenwriter, same director, and same principal cast.
Right.
So the thing is that I don't know who directed it.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure about that. The thing is, here's what's important. I don't have anything to base it on because I haven't seen it.
And you haven't even read a synopsis, right?
Okay.
You're unspoiled on the...
I am aware of a couple of pieces.
You know the premise, but
I know
not
the basic premise of it, but here's something that's also important. New rules also established just last year with The Best Man, because The Best Man holiday, which we have not covered yet, is all of the above. The thing is, I had never seen it, so I don't have anything to work with. So I can't say, it's the same as what happens there, and I don't know what that is.
Sure.
So I still have to speculate. So my thing is...
No. So and about the director, it was funny. I was... as we were sitting down, I was trying to remember who directed this because I knew it was someone important. And then the opening credits, oh, right, it's John Landis. And is he still active, by the way? Or I don't recall if he...
Well, tiny shout out to Everything I Learned from Movies, where Steve had interviewed guest Dana Gould and started talking about, John Landis, R.I.P. And Dana Gould said, no, he's still alive. He's no, he's not. He's just like, no, I just talked to him a couple weeks ago. He's still alive.
Good.
But I don't know if he's still doing stuff.
And he didn't direct the sequel either, I would imagine.
I'm trying to look it up, but at the same time, I also don't want... I don't want it to really sway what I'm thinking about right now. I'm fairly certain he did not direct the sequel, but it does not matter because all I can do is speculate.
Yeah. Anyway, as I was trying to recall who was,
I love I'm creating loopholes for myself.
like who had directed and who was involved in production. I was like, is Robert Zemeckis in there somewhere? Because like Zemeckis, was that on purpose? Was that a shout out? Or
I mean, if they're making Frank Oz, I can't remember what they said.
There was like some kind of
white courtesy call phone.
Yeah, it was like a name that sounded like Frank Oz with some extra syllable, like Frank Oskowitz or something along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they can throw stuff in there, why not?
Sure.
But I don't know. Writer different than director, what have you.
Yeah. So anyway,
so now that we've established rules,
so the sequel's definitely off limits until we've seen it.
It's not. Well, how about this? I'm so excited I can watch this movie now.
Do not want to taint yourself before
and I'm not going to do a Major League 2 problem where I watch it back to back and then just go like, oh, that was too much at once. I'm gonna let this movie breathe.
Yeah,
first.
I gotta let it breathe a little.
6 months later, so I still haven't seen it yet. Damn it.
So anyway, despite all that stalling, I feel like I don't have a great answer for that.
Well, then can I go first?
Oh well, yours is probably better than mine, so I'd better go first. I mean, I think the movie's pretty self-explanatory about like where these characters are meant to be headed, because Azim is like still willing to give Akeem, sorry, Akeem is still willing to give everything up after he and Lisa have gotten married, and
he did it once and then offered again.
Yeah, I know, and then at that point she's like, oh no, this is actually pretty good, and yeah, I don't really see their future working in any way other than finding a certain middle ground, finding a personal balance between, continuing to kind of be in that role and live in that world and enjoy the material comforts, because, we don't want Lisa's dad worrying about her well-being, certainly, and maintaining the financial lifeline that's going to support their lifestyle. And I also think it's interesting, as you mentioned, that like Akeem does display a real sense of responsibility to, if nothing else, his family, and by extension the kind of institution of royalty in the country. Like we learned very little about the country itself, and like how involved are they in the actual governance? Is there a prime minister somewhere, or are they just a figurehead of state? But even if he is just a figurehead of state,
just the British royals and how obsessed we are.
I know, yeah. And even if he doesn't have any responsibilities of governance, just look at all the people who were, cheering with happiness when his engagement was announced, and even more so at his marriage. And he doesn't want to let all those people down. All the like the guy in the basketball arena. You don't. I was just overjoyed at the royal family being there. So I see Akeem making a future out of fulfilling those responsibilities and just making things good for his country, and but also as he as into adulthood and eventually succeeds his father, I can definitely see him seeking a bit more moderation. Probably a lot of rose bearers are gonna get reassigned and have some more productive things to do. And I mean, we can also definitely predict, knowing what we do about both of them, that a lot of like philanthropy is going to come into it, with like Lisa from the very beginning as someone who's concerned with community improvement and the less fortunate, and this is a very exciting position for her to be in, that she has even more reach, influence, and financial resources to again, we learned so little about Zamunda. I don't know if it has like a poorer class, or people who are suffering that she can help, or even if the whole country is that rich, beyond her borders, or back home in New York, she could send some money. And yeah, I mean, I see her being kind of like the outspoken philanthropist, like a Princess Diana kind of archetype, ideally without the the
tragic
the
death
tragic
and divorce,
and the
tragic death / the divorce.
Like even the divorce would be sad by itself.
Oh yeah, I know.
So yeah, and we don't want, and Maybe that's in the sequel, but for my headcanon, we'll say happily ever after.
Okay. No, I get it. So if I can speak on behalf of younger me, it's gonna be a fairy tale. She has found her Prince Charming, and he has found. Well, I mean, to be fair,
he is very charming.
He is actually correct, but unfortunately, in the Prince Charming context, you don't really know too much about him. But in this case, it's kind of a whole story where it's just she finds her Prince Charming, and he finds the love of his life, and they get married, and seeing how important having an heir is, I think that they will have a very close family. I mean, if you really look at how he interacts with his mom and his dad, being the only son, I see him wanting to have that kind of love and support, that even though you hear things like, I just remember the first time I had ordered your first diaper change, and now you're a man to be married.
I know. It's like he has a bit of a problem with, like, his parents are genuinely affectionate, but also more distant than they ought to be.
It's like a half
father, especially.
Yeah, it's a half and half thing. So this is what I think may happen.
Sorry, not to cut you off, but it is interesting that we see both of those characters go through an arc of kind of reaching more respect and understanding with their respective fathers. So.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I was about to say, who? His grandpa? No. No, you're right. So one of the things I think that is something that is going to happen, and isn't so much like what happens with them specifically, but they will like go into this royal life together, but there's going to be a period of time where he is not the king, he's still a prince. And there's going to be some conflict, because with the Keeman wanting to change traditions, and now granted his father did change a little thing for his son, I think he is kind of rooted in tradition more than he really lets on. But the fact that it's his wife kind of leaning in saying, are you sure? And it's his son who wants something different. I think there's going to be a little bit of conflict there that's going to have to come into play. And I think that there will be, Akeem and Lisa will have kids before Joffrey eventually, is no longer the king. But I one of the things I wanted to point out, and that I thought was really interesting, is that this is me speculating, by the way, for his parents having an arranged marriage, his mother is very strong-willed.
That's true.
She does not jump up on one foot and only does.
Akeem takes after her.
I know. Yeah. I know. There is that kind of interesting thing right there. It's just like, no. My mother was very, she had an opinion and was very strong-willed, but she also had to go through the whole thing. Like, I learned to love your father. I'm like, was it Akeem's father who made the arrangement to this woman has to want every single thing for my son? I wonder if he set that up. Instead, it was just like, no, it's going to be an arranged marriage, but of course you're going to have somebody who's going to be good for you. And it was him that was trying to have this whole thing set up to where she was just a brainwashed, do whatever I want for my son situation.
Yeah, I mean, there were hints dropped that, that's in line with their traditions. That's how it's always supposed to be for,
But his wife is not that way.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, because they talk about how his wife did go through that upbringing, and she was at least, trained in courtly manners and such, but
which actually makes me wonder if his original intended, if that was just going to be set up until the vows were said, and then it's just like, okay, it's settled now I can be me.
Interesting.
So I'm actually really curious, and I'm really curious if she comes up in the sequel, because I honestly feel really bad for her.
Yeah,
because tradition is just like, I'm going to be a queen, and I don't even know if she wanted to be the queen, but she's
trying so hard, and she doesn't seem the least bit unhappy about it. But that's kind of the entire point. And
but also at the same time, it's just like, oh, I'm so sorry that you're doing this, and you deserve better than this. And she seems dumb, but the fact that she's doing it makes her kind of smart.
Yeah, I mean, not dumb, just very committed.
She's dancing. She's jumping up on one foot, and she's making a noise. She's barking. No, she was barking.
Barking like a dog, then a large dog, then an orangutan.
Well, she wasn't jumping, but that's not the point.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, she looks dumb when she's doing that, but
of course. And I have to think that inside her own head, she's probably very proud of herself in that moment, just that she is that fully committed.
I was about to say she definitely did.
That's succeeding at a role,
or really, really brainwashed.
One wonders.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh well, but all my respect to her.
Oh, totally.
And sadness for the fact that she did not become the queen. But in my head canon, she didn't want to be the queen. She was just doing right by her family.
Most likely, yeah. And I'm sure Akeem checked in on her after everything else, and
I really can't wait to watch the sequel.
I hope they actually touch on all the stuff you're hoping that it touches
Yes.
on, and not just leaving it in the dust.
I'm imagining 2 kids. I'm imagining some conflict, but overall conflict with the family overall. But overall, it will be a very happy marriage.
Oh, what if one of their kids wants to, be totally waited on and not self-reliant at all? And
Oh my God. So then it's like a Disney sequel where it turns out the problem that was in the first one is the opposite of the other one.
yeah,
and then
the grandfather comes in and spoils them
Yeah.
with servants. And
Ooh, what's up with walking on rose petals, Grandpa? So yeah, so that's what I'm seeing. And but ultimately happily ever after. And I'm curious what this movie that will, play with that, the conflict that will really come into play. Which I know what it is. I know he has a son somewhere else. I'm curious how they're going to factor that in.
that is very strange. Yes. Okay. So just
But
yeah,
really
go
quick,
ahead.
for my what happens next? They're going to consummate the fuck out of that marriage because they didn't get to have sex.
There was a lot of tension being built up there. Yes.
Right, but then bam, there she is. He didn't speak to her. Boom, they got married. So yeah.
I wonder. I wonder if that was also one of those deleted scenes in this conspicuously R-rated movie.
Oh,
Probably not.
doubt it. Doubt it.
That would be difficult to handle the pacing of.
I was about to say, and I nothing to justify that.
That's
Anyways,
it's not what they mean by denouement.
But he's just so happy to see her. So
Yeah. So,
but he does kiss her, like, Your Highness, we haven't gotten to that part yet in the ceremony.
yeah, it's very, very passionate. About the sequel. So just while we have the opportunity to speak from a position of ignorance, while we still haven't seen
somewhat.
it. Yeah, I know. Just to recap a conversation that you and I had, like one of the small bits of information that we've learned is that Akeem had an illegitimate son that he left behind in New York.
That's my understanding.
It's just a very strange thing. And we were both struck by that. Like, what? That doesn't make sense.
That doesn't feel like his character.
He slept with someone? That goes against his character in like a lot of ways. And
To be fair, he wasn't celibate.
that's true. I mean, they danced around it. About like the bathers, but yeah, it's like
Right.
and then I don't want to get into details.
weird
Like, how much was he doing with them exactly? You
Well, the
know?
thing
And
is, though, is that I was imagining that the bathers were very conscientious and not accidentally having heirs too.
yeah, maybe that's just an aspect of like,
Or
once he's
maybe his dad
unsupervised.
stepped in
and what
and made sure that they went away because.
I don't know that. Yeah, and
Sorry, I read a lot of historical.
yeah, and who knows if besides people who've seen the movie already, but who
Damn it.
besides them knows if it's gonna all turn out to have some resolution and another comedic misunderstanding. It's like,
It turns out it was semis the whole time.
I would put
claiming
good-
he was the prince.
I would put good money on that. That's definitely where my mind went, and perhaps there's some comical lack of sex ed misunderstanding about how Akeem would have even been able to get somebody pregnant. I don't know. We'll have to see.
I don't know. That it is interesting. Oh, I do get worried at times for comedy sequels, which are very few and far between. Specifically, good comedy sequels,
Right.
where they feel completely different than the original. It's just like,
Yeah.
this feels odd.
Everyone wants to recapture the experience of the first time you saw the movie, and you can never go home again, or you can rarely succeed at that. Cinema's a tricky business,
Right. I mean, I'm looking at you, Major League, again.
Sure.
and also like Ghostbusters. But to be fair, I saw Ghostbusters 2 first. So I felt Ghostbusters 1 felt really weird.
Right. We could probably fill an entire hour just talking about The Force Awakens in that regard. You mentioned that the other day to me.
I mean, we won't do that.
Right.
I'm not even going to say anything about that.
But that was like a qualified success for you.
That was a success because it did make me feel like I was a little girl again.
And for the record, I think Star Wars Episode 7 and 8 are good movies.
All right. So any other closing thoughts?
No, I just thank you for sharing your enthusiasm for this movie with me, because I think more of it, like I said, in this milieu, I was always a bigger fan of Trading Places, and this was more your thing, but I really did get to enjoy it vicariously, and yeah, you did point out a lot of the little glimmers of comedic genius. It's like, oh yeah, this is really good. So.
I do enjoy Trading Places as well. Been a long time since I've watched that movie, so I'm not sure how much I'm going to be shocked by what they cut out.
Yeah. I'll say that I did the research. I read the entire article on what actually is happening in the climactic trading scene, and I think I could explain most of it to a layperson now. So
Whereas I specifically would say like, oh my God, Jamie Lee Curtis is naked in this movie?
no, you see, first the price of orange juice, it was going up, but they thought it was going to go down, and then it actually went down, and then and you see a futures contract. You can make money when something gets cheaper because
She's naked in this movie?
As I understand it.
Yes, of course. Okay.
Because you watched it on Comedy Central.
I watched it, edited on television.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's Trading Places. No, that's Coming to America.
Yeah, and yeah, thank you for sharing it with me. I had a real good time being here.
I appreciate you talking about it with me.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So one of the things I want to make sure I do, I want to give a special shout out to a podcast called Date in a Blink. I was introduced to them recently, and this is what's amazing about the premise. It's a blind date, an audio date, and a speed date all at once. They're actually making the arrangements so people are having a date as the podcast. And so, I'm making assumptions about our listeners, but if we're talking about romance and if you actually want to listen to a date happen in real time, kind of similar to how we were watching Akeem and Lisa fall in love right before our eyes, you might want to check them out. So again, it's called Date in a Blink, and they're hosted by Blind Date. So special shout out to them. All right. So if you have any other thoughts about Coming to America, hit us up. I'm not doing too much social media lately, but we're still on Twitter and Instagram at HEAMCast, HEAMCAST, and Facebook at Happily Ever Aftermath.
Yeah, I'm at Ryan Skonnord on Twitter. You can find me retweeting HEAMCast. So
and then
anything to say, I'd love to hear it.
Okay. So thanks again, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. And until next time, may your aftermath be happy.